Okay, so introduction to DevOps. This is a term. I don't know how many of you must have heard it before, or how many of you are familiar to this term. But then this is a subject that was introduced, a lab that was introduced specifically for IT because IT deals with applications of computer science. So DevOps is one of the applications of computer science, and you mostly use in IT industries today in today's world. So I'll take it through a journey of what DevOps exactly is, by why was it introduced, and what benefits are IT industries reaping out of it. So all that we will cover in today's session. So this is the following agenda that we'll be covering today. We'll be addressing the elephant in the room. We'll be talking about what DevOps is, what are DevOps practices, which different automation tools are there in the market that IT industries are using, and I'll also take you on a short brief of what career opportunities do you have ahead with DevOps, right? So let's first understand the problem. Let's first understand and address the elephant in the room. So what is the problem? Right, and even before that, before the problem, let's understand, these are all these giants that you can see on the screen, the companies which are giants in their own respect. So now there are several questions like, what would have helped Netflix to evolve from shipping DVDs to streaming videos over the web. It is one of the biggest streaming websites or applications, right? Similarly, what would have helped Amazon to predict, how much equipment to procure in order to meet the different traffic demands? What would have helped NASA to analyze the data that it receives from Mars rover Curiosity? What would have helped Walmart to become one of the biggest king in the retail industry? What would have helped, Facebook to, bring out, roll out new changes every second, every minute, and constantly update or refresh the feeds. So all of these things, and there are many other instances like your New York Stock Exchange, you have Google, you have Sony Pictures, and you have Apple. So these all big giants. Why are they giants in their own field? Why are they, at the top in their own respective fields? Because they do something different from what others are doing, right? So we will have to understand the approach that they have taken into consideration, the approach that they have applied to become better amongst their competitors. So, and let me tell you, DevOps is one approach that they all have, is similar amongst all of these companies, that they have chosen to, to outsmart, to be faster, to be more, compatible to the changing needs of the modern day customer base. And DevOps has definitely helped these companies to be where they are today. So we'll understand that. Right. So business requires new features and changes every now and then, right? So this is one of the common line that you will find, or you will notice, that today's businesses, they need new features and new changes to come out every now and then. And why is that required? Why do businesses need to bring out new features and changes every now and then? That is because they want to survive the competitive era that is going out there. They have to continuously be, in the race of innovating. They have to be continuously in the race of bringing out new products, meeting customer demands. Because if the customer is unhappy, they will definitely lose their customer base. And we all know that customers, they have likings towards different features. They want something, they want new innovations, they want things that will help them ease their day-to-day routine, right? So you have seen examples of headphones, you have seen examples of how headphones have evolved over time, right? So we had wired headphones, then we went on to wireless, then we have those earpods. So continuously things are evolving, they are innovating, and people are moving towards new features. So if a business is very stagnant, and if the business does not adapt to the changes, or does not adapt to the new competitive era that is going on out in the market, it will definitely flop. It will definitely fail. So the problem is that the business has to constantly evolve. They have to constantly innovate, right? And as the line says, innovation drives business success. So only if you innovate, you will be able to be successful in your respective businesses. And we have seen such examples. We have seen examples of Zomato. We have seen examples of Uber Eats. We have seen example of Swiggy. So these are all applications that serves food to you while you being at your home. So we never thought of any such application that would come in back 10 years back. We never thought about any such application. But today we see we are mostly using it every other day, right? So that is what innovation is. That is what has is driving business. This kind of innovation is driving more businesses, right? Who knew that we could share a cab? Who knew we could there was no need to buy a car in order to travel in a car. You could simply uh, book an Ola or an Uber to travel, right? So all these are business models and new innovations that are driving new changes in the business, right? So business requires new features and new changes. A business cannot sustain longer if it remains static and if it uses the same old approach. But the problem is that the business needs these features and changes to be rolled out very frequently. It mostly what we can say is it can be days or weeks, but not months. So the businesses they need to deploy these changes, the new additions to their existing application has to be done in days time or weeks time, not more, not in months, not in several months or years, right? So because what will happen is, if for example, let's take an instance like let's assume there are two competitors and who are working on the same kind of a product, and they want to release it. The one of the competitor, let's say competitor A, is trying to release it in December because owing to the Christmas occasion, that he feels that there will be a lot of customer base who would purchase that product. So if he tries to innovate faster, if he tries to bring out his new product faster, right, before the Christmas, he will be able to make more benefit out of the product sale. What if competitor B also tries, but since he's using a traditional approach, he's using an old approach where the new features that he's trying to roll out, or the product that he's trying to bring to the market, does not meets the deadline, and it surpasses the Christmas occasion. So what will happen? Uh, if he brings the product into the market post Christmas occasion, he will have a lesser sale of the products, right? So it is very important that you bring out the new changes and features immediately into the market in order to capture larger market as compared to a smaller market when those occasions have passed. So it's very important that you stay very updated with the market trend and bring things to the market at a higher speed. For example, another example would be of Zomato. So initially, I don't know if you have noticed it. So initially, when we used to use Zomato, there was no feature like track your rider or track your order, and you just had to place order and you just had to wait, or probably it would give you some time by what time it would reach, like that. But it did not give you an option to exactly track where the order has reached. But then later on, with the help of GPS and other feature or APIs, they started they started offering features like track your rider and etc. Right, and you could exactly track him on the map where he has reached. So that was the innovation done by Zomato, and then later on, other competitors noticed it and they immediately turn around and they implemented the same thing. So imagine they had to be on their toes in order to bring up those or accommodate those new features into their applications. Imagine if Swiggy would have done it some years later, people would have mostly switched to Zomato only. But still, Swiggy is much used, and Uber Eats are much used because they are in competition with Zomato and they are trying to bring in the same features, or they are trying to innovate themselves. But if they see that someone has innovated, they definitely will turn around and try to bring in the same innovation because they want to be abreast with the latest trend in the market, right? So that is what businesses need to do. So typically, your businesses, when it comes to an IT organization, they have teams which work on software development and maintenance, right? So we have teams like developer teams, and we have someone called operations team. So let's understand what a developer does. So dev is usually a shorthand for developers in particular. But in practice, it is even wider, and it means that all people involved in developing the product, that includes the product, QA, and other disciplines, right? So developer is not just a person who codes, but quality assurance people, and there are other people who are involved in developing the product, right? So what is the primary work of a developer? The primary task of a developer is to add new features to the product, contribute a new feature to the ongoing product. Either he will create a product altogether, or he will add to an existing product, right? So that is the work of a developer. We have another team which is called as ops, which is also called as operations team. So this is a separate team, and so far there was no light thrown on these teams, because they were working in shadow, they were working in background, so no one knew much about what these kind of teams do in an IT organization. But then they are also very important for working of a business. So let's understand what an operations team do. So operations is a blanket term for system administrators, your database administrators, your network engineers, security professionals, and various other sub-disciplines and job titles. So these are the people who work in a shadow, and they usually are, behind the picture, right? So for example, for a movie, so we just notice who's the director and who's the actor and the actresses, likewise, and who's the singer at max. But then we don't know who is the cinematographer, who's the lyricist, and all. We don't pay attention towards those people, right? But even they contribute to the entire making of the movie. So similar is the concept here. You have a developer team who develops the product, but then you have an operations team who helps in creation of that product, or helps in making sure that the product is stable when it is on the live environment. So operations team do exist, and they have different roles as well. So roles like a system administrator who manages your systems, servers, storage racks. You have database administrators who manages your DBAs. You have network engineers who manages connections, routing of data from one location to another, and managing your WAN, LAN, and MAN networks, etc. Then you have security professionals whose task is to identify any security loopholes, or try to design your network in a secure way. So they have different roles, and they belong to different sub disciplines. But these are people who are categorized under operations. What is their main task? Their main task is to keep the site stable and fast. The operations का काम क्या है? Just their main task, the task allotted to them is to keep the site stable and fast. That is, whatever application you are using, that application must be stable, and that application must never slow down. It should be as fast as possible in providing services to the user. That is the work of operations. The work of developer is to keep on adding new feature to the existing product, right? So the ops job is to enable the business, and that is the dev's job too. So both of them, although their roles are different, developers' work is to develop, operations work is to manage. Although their roles are different, but they both are essentially doing what they are enabling the businesses, right? So their role, although the tasks are different, but the common goal is to enable business, is to make sure that the business is running all the time, right? But but code and features changes are integrated at the end of the development. So this is one of the issues, this is one of the problems with how traditional IT industries work. The code and the features that are developed, they are integrated at the end of the development cycle. So I hope you must have studied software engineering, where you must have studied different life cycles of how a product is built. So when a product is planned, designed, planned, coded, tested, and then deployed, so mostly the code features that are parallelly worked upon, they are integrated towards the end of the development. That is, it is not that in between of a development cycle the new feature will be added. It is always at the end of the development cycle that the new code or feature will be added. So usually, let's say for example, there are multiple teams which are distributed across multiple sites, right? And they are working on an application, and they are developing different features of the same application. So let's say one team is in Mumbai, one is that is developing the login page, and there is another team in Delhi which is working on the payment gateway, and there's third team in US which is working on inventory management. So of course, since they are working on a same project, although they are working on a different module, but their codes need to be merged together at the end of the development to have a working site, right? So although they are working on a different model, ultimately their code needs to be merged so that you have a working product, right? And that always happens at the end of the development. So due to which the integration was long and unpredictable process. So since the entire development process was carried out separately over a long span of time by each of the teams, Mumbai, Pune, US, chances are that the initial assumption made by team one and the way they coded it was later changed by team two, right? So it might so happen that team one, while it was doing the login page, uh, during the development process, they must have realized that something must be changed, or there has to be a certain way in which the thing should be coded, which was not conveyed to team two, and team two was working in a perception that what they had discussed earlier is what how the payment gateway will be should be coded. So what happens in this case is now both the teams are working in their own terms and they are coding differently, and once when at the end you try to merge those or you try to integrate those codes that the teams have worked upon, it will be that usually that integration will be a long process, because of course you will come up with a lot of errors and it will be a very unpredictable process. So the results will be unpredictable because both the teams were initially, when they decided to work on a project, initial meetings were different and the end results were different. So the predictable, so what they predicted as an outcome will be totally different from what was predicted, right? So this is the issue with traditional IT approach. So as you can see over here, frequently degraded when merging and hard to merge manually. The issue with the existing system is, as you can see, the middle line over here is the main code line. This is where the main code is being developed. And then we suddenly branch out from the main code because we are working on a parallel feature for that main code. So we are working on different features of that main code. So you do branching, right? And then when you branch out, ultimately when you finish the development of that feature, you try to integrate it back to the main code, right? So this is what is called merging, when you branch out from a main code to work on a certain feature of that product, and then once you finish on with the feature, you try to merge it back to the main code. So the problem over here is, uh, when you branched out from the main code had certain set of variables, or the way it was functioning was different. But by the time you merged, you finished your branch and you try to merge it back to the main code, things have changed in the main code because the other teams have changed a few parameters or a few variables, or what not they have changed in the main code. And now the problem is that integration is very difficult because the branch was created keeping in mind a certain parameters of the main code which have changed over the time, and now when you're trying to merge those changes back to the main code, those changes are not working fine. They are not well integrated. They are not accepting the changes in the main code. So basically your code will crash, or it will have bugs, or it will throw up errors while it is in function. So these are the issues that usually people face, IT industry face, that when the integration time or development times are too long, or when you branch out from a main code and you create sub features of that main code, and you take too much time in order to merge it back to the main code. In the meanwhile, a lot of things change, and usually then merging back into the main code is very hard to do. That thing is very hard to do, as well as it will bring out unpredictable results. So these are the issues that usually companies face. That is again, a lot of bugs are found at the end of testing phase. So another issue with this traditional IT approach is that you never find bugs during the development phase, because you don't focus on testing while you develop. And what happens is, once you finish your development, you send it for testing, right? So this is what we have studied in software engineering. So what happens is, when once you start testing, a lot of bugs are encountered. Bugs as in the errors, loopholes in your code are encountered. So what will happen if you encounter a lot of bugs at the end of the testing phase? You will eventually turn around and you will start redeveloping the entire product again to remove those bugs and errors, right? And then this will continue. you'll redevelop, you will again make similar mistakes of having longer integrations time and merging at separate times. Again, then at the end, you send it to the testing phase. Again, the problems due to the longer integration times and merge issues, you'll again find bugs at the end of the testing phase. So these are the common problems that IT industries were facing, that the time they took to develop a product, and by the time they merged all the development cycles of individual features of the product, they figured out that there were a lot of bugs they encountered during the testing phase. And it all started where while they started creating the product in different branches. So now again, this graph over here is very interesting curve, where you can see on the x-axis you have the comprehensiveness of testing, and on the y-axis you have the length and the complexity of build. What is build? Build is basically when you compile your code, you package it, you do unit testing on the code. So that is called build. So comprehensiveness of testing and length and complexity of build. So as and when you keep on testing, the more you test the product, you will realize that the length and the complexity of the build is also increasing, right? So as the system size increases, the load of the test gets bigger. So if you don't do frequent testing of your product, what will happen? If you do all the testing towards the end of the development cycle, your test load size will increase. Of course, your system size is increasing, that system that you're trying to test increases, which in return increases the load of your test. So your testing will take a lot of time, and if your testing takes a lot of time, of course your development cycle will also increase, so the lead time to the market will also increase. And again, the chances are that a lot of bugs will be encountered because you're testing all together at the end. So a lot of bugs will be encountered and you'll have to re go the entire cycle again, right? So that is the problem, that for example, let's say Facebook, they constantly keep innovating. They constantly keep innovating with the news feeds, their profile pages, their comment sections, their likes and dislike sections, and etc. So there are constantly they keep on innovating. What if they bring in all the features together and they then test it on the app and then they try to roll it out? It will be a lot of painstaking task for them to do so, because everything needs to be tested and then approved and then rolled out onto the actual live app. But if they test individual feature every time the feature has been developed, it will become very easier for them to manage those test cases and manage those new features on the live app, right? So imagine every time Facebook comes out with a new feature, they don't wait to integrate all the features that they are working parallelly and then test it on the system, which will increase the load of the test. But they test immediately, instantaneously, whenever a new feature is developed. They test the feature then and there, and then they roll out that feature onto the live app. So dealing with ambiguous requirements or realizing it differently is another issue in a traditional IT development lifecycle. That is, you don't realize what are the requirements, you take it ambiguously, and again realizing it differently. That is, if there are certain requirements that have come, every team might take it differently, and they might have their own perception of the requirement, and they might develop a product based on the way they realized it, right? So that can also lead to a lot of communication error, communication gap, and ultimately leading to a error in the product development, right? So the user or the end user might not, the user acceptance test might not pass when the the development team has realized it, the requirements differently, and they've coded it differently, whereas the end user who wanted it in a certain manner is not happy with the outcome, right? So that these are the issues that usually a traditional IT development lifecycle faces. Again, how long does it takes for a committed code to move and run successfully in the production environment? This is one of the biggest questions that IT industries are currently facing. That is, usually we hear people say that it takes about a month or 45 days, or sometimes it even takes weeks, 8 weeks or 6 weeks in order to roll out a new feature, right? But then you cannot wait for these many months to roll out a feature. The feature has to be rolled out immediately. in today's competitive world, it has to be rolled out every day or every week. And Amazon, Facebook, Zomato, or Netflix, they roll out their features every second. A new feature is added into their environment every second, and so they have to be that fast when it comes to changing your code, because the more the user base is growing, your original code will not suffice to it. You have to make changes to your code in order to accommodate to the changing user base or user requirements. So you have to constantly keep changing your code. You have to constantly commit new codes into your environment, and not just your staging environment, but you have to make it live. So although you have written a code, right, in your production, in your staging areas, but then the code has to be made live. So these are the two technical jargons that are used in IT industry. So जो हम लोग code लिखते हैं, it is first written in the development environment, then you move it to the testing environment where it is test, then you move into the staging environment, and then from the staging environment where a dummy run of it is done, you actually release it to the production environment जहाँ पर वो actually live हो जाता है, and everyone, the user base can actually see those new features, right? So the question is, how long does it take for a committed code? Although you have committed the code, you have successfully written the code. What is the time it takes to move the code from a committed state to the production environment? Because there are a lot of things in between that will slow down the entire process. The testing phase will slow down. The staging phase will slow it down. The environment setup for production will slow it down. So there are a lot of uh, hurdles in between these stages that will usually slow down the release of the product. So that is another question to be answered, to be addressed when it comes to traditional IT approach of software development lifecycle. Again, deploy changes per day versus the lead time. So this is another thing very important to focus on, that is changes needs to be deployed every day and the lead times have to be reduced. So these are the two things which are of utmost concern for an IT organization, that they have to ensure that they do whatever changes they make, they have to deploy it frequently, and they have to reduce the lead time to the market. But change is the root cause of most outages. So changes are the root cause of most outages. This is because if you try to change something, that change can either benefit you or that change can either disturb an ongoing process. Right. So usually this is the line what operations team don't like. They don't want changes. They don't want developers to make frequent changes to the code because they believe in stabilizing the code. They believe in stabilizing the code, and they don't want the code to be uh, you know the code to be disturbed because it is working fine as of now. And if the developer brings in the new change, that change might disturb my setup, my environment, and it might bring down the efficiency of the production environment. So usually operations team, they have issues with new changes, and developers are meant, their work is to bring out new changes, right? So this line totally fits the scenario that change is the root cause of most outages. So this is the scenario that usually happens in an IT organization. You have a developer and you have an operations team. Developers, they develop the entire product, everything. So they will develop it and they will send it to the operations for deployment, right? So developer will develop it and they will send it to the operations team for deploying the code on the production environment. The production environment, what happens is the code will, let's say that somehow there is an error and the code does not fits the production environment, or the code does not performs well on the production environment. So now what happens is the developer and the operations, they will not come to a common agreement. They will start pointing out at each other. They will start the blame games. Like the developer will say, it is not my code, it's your machines that you have configured are not accepting my code. The operations will say, it's not my machines, it's your code that are not performing well on those machines. So they will never agree that what is the common issue. They will always try to say that we have done our part, you are the one who's not doing your part, right? So these are the issues that the teams faces in an IT organization. So inconsistent environments are one of the major issues of slowdown of a product release. So usually we have development environment, we have test environment, you have stage environment, and you have production environment. So these are the different environments. So your code must be the same when it moves through these environments. A code, when developed in a development environment, must work similarly in the test environment, and the same in the stage, and the same in the production environment. So that is only possible if all the environments are similar. So what if someone has written the developer environment is, let's say developer has written a Java application and he is using Java version X, and then the testing and the testing environment is using Java version Y, and stage environment is using some other version. What will happen? Definitely the code will, the code will not perform well in the test as well as in the stage, right? And then ultimately it will fail in the production environment. So inconsistency in the environment is one of the issues that usually the traditional IT infrastructure faces. So what developers does is, developers, they introduce change, they try to implement every new feature that has been introduced. And operations, for them, change is the enemy. For operations, changes lead to instability. So these two teams, they are like, Tom and Jerry. They always keep on fighting. They always keep on pointing at each other that you are the reason why the code has failed. You are the one who has not developed a better code. So they keep on fighting with each other, right? So usually that leads to a wall of confusion between the developers and the operations. So this is a technical term called wall of confusion, where developers and operations, they don't sit together and identify the issues. They will just do their part and toss the work over the wall to operations. See, developer is the one who understands programming languages, who understands, the functionalities and requirements of the end user, because they are more close to the end user. So they will develop products based on the programming proficiency they have, and they will build a package and they will just give it to the operations. See, an ops team are who, they are administrators. They are not well versed with programming languages. They are all good with managing machines and configuring environments and etc. So the problem is devs will toss out their work to ops. Ops don't understand the codes and stuff. They will simply try to create an environment, and they try to push the code into those environments. So if the code is performing, or if the code needs a certain environment, they are not well versed with that. They are not knowledgeable about it. So what happens is, definitely due to this wall of confusion, that they don't understand each other's work, definitely there are issues that come up in the production environment that leads to crash of the code. So this has to be taken care of. So we'll see one instance of how this wall of confusion works. So usually, let's say for example, during infrastructure setup, on day one, the developer, he sends out artifacts based on the requirements. What are artifacts? Artifacts are basically, these are documents that the developer passes on to the operations and tells him that I need so and so environment for my product to work, for my code to work. So I need Java, I need MySQL, I need Linux base. So it can be anything. So it can be LAMP stack, WAMP stack, whatever he needs for his code to work. So he sends out an artifact to the operations team. What operation teams does is, he manually hacks the scripts received and changes the config files to reflect change in the production, which could potentially lead to an issue. Because operations team believes that they will just see that he needs Java, he needs MySQL, he needs a certain operating system. They will not bother into realizing that what version of Java is actually required, what other dependencies are required, what OS version is required, etc. They will not bother about that. They will simply create an environment based on the artifacts given by him, and they might even tweak the artifact to an extent that, let's say he wants Ubuntu 20, but there is Ubuntu 18 available, so they will not upgrade it to Ubuntu 20. They will leave it to Ubuntu 18. Or probably Java का कोई X version चाहिए, and they will leave it to Y version, or likewise. So this is what happens on day one. So on day two, what happens is, there, of course, there will be loss of work, because the code that was submitted by the developer on the production environment, it will not work. So what happens is, the developer, the operations team and developers, they both will be questioned about it. The operations team will say, developer gave me faulty artifacts. Developers will say all the artifacts are fine. The error is because of some other issue, or probably the quality assurance team was given a wrong setup to test my code. So this is the issue. This is the problem that is ongoing with these teams in the IT companies. Another thing is, again, after delivery of the product, what can happen is, uh, the test engineer, he will test. So probably developer, what he did is he coded and he gave delivered the code to the test engineer to test the code. What test engineer says is there are some database anomalies and the code is not fit to be deployed on live server. The developer was very sure or certain that his code is working fine, and he has done all the hard work, sleepless night he has spent on the code, and now that the code is working fine, he's submitted it to the test engineer. But the test engineer says there are database anomalies. Your database, probably the connectivity is not right, or you're leaking out information from the database, or the code is not fit to be deployed on the live server. So again, the questions will be raised back to the developer. Why is the code malperforming? So the developer will say, I checked at my end. Seems like the database deployed on the staging server by the operations team is running an older version, which is why my code is malperforming. And the operations team, when asked about it, they will say, I was given the wrong artifacts. Also, constant changes in the code can be one of the reason for the failure. So no one is agreeing to a common thing that that can be an issue and we should solve it out together. But everyone has their own reason to defend themselves, and they're not working in unanimity to overcome the issues. These are the problems that usually teams faces in an IT organization. So discourage change in the interest of stability, or allow change to happen as often as it need to be. So this is the dilemma that the business owners are put into after all of these confusion. Okay, should we discourage change because we want stability with our product, or should we allow the changes to happen as often as it needs to be, but that would lead to instability? So which one should we go for is the dilemma that the business owners are into, right? So this diagram, just pay attention to the diagram. This is a depiction of how currently IT teams operate, how teams function, and how they come together to build a project, and what issues do we face with a traditional approach in order to create a project. So usually there are three types of teams. You have an in-house team that is hired by the company, and they are the people who are in-house. You have a third-party team who you offshore team जिसको तुम you hire from other clients and you give them certain module of your project to work on, or you have combination of both in-house and third-party team who work together to build a project. So what happens is these teams, they have strict segregation of duties between the departments. So what happens is every team will be given certain duties and they will not be asked, they will not be allowed to coordinate with each other. They have strictly been told to work on their roles and their modules, right? So what will happen if this is the approach? Projects prolongation will happen. That is, it will take a lot of time. Calendar time will be very huge. Months will pass by for the teams to come out with the actual product. So project prolongation will happen if the teams are segregated and made to do work. Again, insufficient coverage by test. So if the teams are performing in parallel and they are doing their own segregated jobs, the unit testing that is done on the codes by submitted by the individual team might not cover all the modules, right? So since you're doing parallel unit tests, it might not cover all the modules. That is one issue with such approaches. Next is high probability of post-release errors. So once it might so happen that the code submitted by the teams have passed the test environment, but once they are deployed on the production environment, post-release errors might definitely come out. So these are the issues that post-release errors might come out when the when they although they have passed the testing environment, but since the production environment was a bit different than that of testing environment, the code has failed in the production environment. Again, lack of users trust in software quality. So if you have post release errors, the customer, that the client that you coded it for, will lack the trust in your coding efficiency or in the quality of the software that you produce, and next time onwards might not give you any contract for creation of any product. So that there you might lose your potential customer base. Again, weeks for updates and fixes. So in case you find out any bugs or fixes or errors in your code, it might take 2 to 4 weeks to release those new changes or patches into your business operations. So again, that means that for that 2 to 4 weeks, the bugs are live, the errors are live, and anyone can exploit those bugs or errors in order to hack into your system. So these are the issues. Next is time consuming deployment of the infrastructure. So again, this is another issue that usually IT teams face. That is, see, you have one team which is doing development, and there's one team that needs to deploy the developed code. So when we say we want to deploy it on a production server, the production servers need to be configured. So there is a team, system administrators team, who does all the configuration, who does all the setting up of the production machines. So that is also a very time consuming process. And if the teams are not efficient, if the teams are not communicating well, the time it takes to develop or create an infrastructure to deploy the code that was created will also increase. So time consuming deployment of the infrastructure is another issue that usually an IT industry or IT teams face when they go for any traditional approach or non-DevOps approach. So these are the issues that a non-DevOps approach uh, uh, faces. The teams which are using non-DevOps approach or go by traditional approach, they face certain issues, right? So the consequences of inefficiency, these are the consequences of inefficiency. That is, as you can see over here, 40% of implementation, 40% of implementation, they end up getting reworked because they don't meet the user's original requirement. So understand, 40% of the IT work, it gets redone because when towards the end it was asked for user acceptance, the user did not accept the work because it did not meet the original requirements. So there were problems that the developers did not understood the requirements well, and which is why it led to certain failure. Again, 80% failure rate, that is for companies that try to adopt their existing tools for DevOps practices. So if the companies they don't follow DevOps, or they try to believe that the existing tools will help them with DevOps, they will definitely fail. They have to introduce new tools that are there in the market in order to achieve DevOps practice. Then again over here, this is very important. A bug caught in the production ends up costing 100 times more than if the same bug was found earlier in the development cycle. So this is very important. We saw those merge issues and integration issues or testing issues. That is, the bugs are always found towards the end of the development cycle. And if you find a bug at the end of the development cycle or after you have made it live on the production server, what will happen? It will cost you, solving that issue or fixing that bug will cost you 100 times more if you would have encountered that bug earlier in the development cycle. So that is one of the issues. Average hourly rate or average hourly cost of infrastructure failure is $1 lakh per hour. So again, infrastructures, there are instances where infrastructures are not stable. They fail. They cannot accommodate to the huge user demands, and they fail. So we have seen instances of good websites going down during the sale hours. And we have seen once it with Jabong and Mintra, where initially when they used to announce any sale, their IT infrastructure were not able to support that amount of user demands, and they used to hang, or they used to go out of order. So and usually at that times the failure will cost you like very huge, right? The cost to that failure is very high. Again, so outperforming teams are 54% more likely to collaborate extensively with their counterparts. So the teams that outperform, 54% of the time, they are the teams who collaborate extensively with each other. But what we saw is we have a devs team and we have an ops team who are not in common terms, who do not collaborate. So DevOps says what? DevOps says that these two teams, they need to collaborate. These two teams, they need to work together in order to achieve the business goals. So and 54% of the times, the teams who have collaborated extensively with each other, they have been able to outperform, right? So again, what are the reasons why these teams do not collaborate with each other? Basically, it is because of the non-executive support, that is the executive at the executive level, the hierarchy itself is not allowing them to communicate with each other. Cultural inhibitors, that is, the teams, they do not want to talk with each other, they have their own differences. And fragmented process, that is, the way the business processes are created, they are in fragments. So one fragment is not allowed to reach another fragment for its to, for the resolution of their issues, or coming out for solutions for their issues. So fragmenting processes in a business environment is also leading to collaboration blockers, right? Again, 70% of chief innovation officers, they would increase the risk to reduce IT cost and accelerate business agility. So nowadays, taking risk is very important, because unless you take risk, you won't be able to bring agility to your business. Agility to your business comes only if you take risk, right? So they would increase the risk to reduce the IT cost and accelerate business agility. That is what the new norms of are being followed by the CIOs of any IT company, right? So these are the consequences of inefficiencies in some numbers that I missed out a few, but then I hope this is understood to you, that if you don't follow a DevOps approach, and if you follow a traditional approach, or if you follow an approach which is very standard, very basic, then there are chances that you might end up incurring a lot of cost, may it be solving any production errors or infrastructure setup errors, or collaborative efforts are not taking place within your teams. So all these will definitely hamper your development cycle. So I hope the background is clear to you, that what is happening in the IT industry, what happened, what used to happen in IT industry, how are the teams interacting, or what are the issues with the teams, and how the development life cycles were not steady, were not fast, or the changes that were needed to get incorporated into the live products were not happening quicker. So we saw the reasons why. Now we will understand what is DevOps and how it has helped IT companies gain competitive edge into the market, and made all the problems go away that we just saw, right? So let's understand what is DevOps. I'll quickly ask, see if everyone has understood. Just give me a yes if you have understood by far what are the issues that companies face. So all those who are attentive can give me a yes in the chat box. Okay. So let's jump to what DevOps is. So DevOps, as the definition says, is the combination of cultural philosophies, practices, and tools that increases an organization's ability to deliver application and services at high velocity. This is the basic definition of DevOps. That we say DevOps is not a programming language. DevOps is not a tool as such. DevOps is a methodology. DevOps is a philosophy that one incorporates in their team in order to bring out the best practices, in order to make use of tools that will help organization to deliver applications and services at high velocity. High velocity is in at a faster rate to the market. So evolving and improving products at a faster pace than the organizations using traditional software development and infrastructure management process, right? So another reason what DevOps helps you with is basically to evolve and improve. DevOps methodology or DevOps practices will help an IT industry to constantly evolve, innovate, and improve their existing products. But innovating and evolving, see, there is a thin line. You can innovate, you can evolve, but what if the time you take to do so is more? Will that be good enough if you innovate and evolve, but the time you're taking is very high to do so? because if the same innovation and improvement is done in a shorter time by your competitor, he will take the edge in the market, right? So if the time taken to innovate and evolve is smaller and faster by your competitor, they will definitely gain upper hand in the market as compared to you. Although you were also innovating, you were also evolving, but the time you took to come to the market, by the time you evolved and innovated, those innovations are already there in the market, and now people have moved on to another set of features or innovation by the time you bought in that older feature into the market. So DevOps helps you evolve and improve, but at a faster pace than those organizations who use traditional software development and infrastructure management process. So other organizations, the one who use traditional software and infrastructure management process, they usually tend to be slower in development, in evolving and improvising. But if you go for DevOps, you will of course be at a faster pace. So this speed enables the organizations to better serve their customers and compete more effectively in the market. So it is all about speed, it is all about innovation, it is all about improvisation. But overall, what matters is the speed with which you do all of these things. So speed is very important, right? And who helps you achieve this speed is the DevOps practice. So it is the automation, it is the collaboration between the teams, it is the fast and smaller releases, right? All of these functionalities, all of these methodologies or practices or philosophies will help you achieve faster speed to the market. And that is what is at the crux of your title called DevOps, right? So what DevOps helps you with is it helps you break the wall of confusion, and you can only break the wall of confusion if both the teams, the dev and the ops team, will communicate with each other. They will collaborate in their efforts towards achieving business goal, and they will integrate well. That is, the tools that DevOps use and the tools that operations use, these tools should be integrated. So integration of the tools is also will also play a major role when it comes to breaking the wall of confusion, so that once you integrate, there is an automation that happens, and once you automate, things will become much smoother, right? So automation, what automation make does is it makes things go very smooth, lets the process run in a smoother fashion, because if you manually do it, manual processes have a lot of hindrances. They definitely in a manual process, human errors coming always comes into picture, and one human error at one stage will then pass it on to all the other stages ultimately. And the problem is that you will not even realize that there was an error that creeped in, and you will wait till the end, so that at the end you will realize that, oh, there was an error at a certain stage which has to be now redone. But in case of automation, even if there is an error, the error will be immediately caught up by the system, and it will be immediately passed on to the respective in charges, so that they can take necessary actions. So automation streamlines and smoothens the entire development process, and that will only happen if the developers tools and the operations tools, they are integrated, right? So communication, collaboration and integration between the devs and the ops team will break the wall of confusion, and this practice is called as DevOps. So as the name says, name has these two words, dev and ops, where the developer and the operations, they both need to work together as a team. They cannot work as two independent teams, but they have to work as one, right? So the ops who think like devs and devs who think like ops is called as DevOps. The operations cannot simply say that I am the one managing the environment or the servers. I am not in charge of handling code or understanding the code. It's not that. Operations also need to think like developers, and developers who develop the code, they also need to think for the operations team when they, how my code will perform on a certain server or an environment. All that thing needs to be thought of by the developer as well. The developers who thinks like op and ops who thinks like dev is given a title DevOps. Guys, if you want, we can take a 5 minutes or a 10 minutes break, and then we'll continue with this. Yes, do you need a break? Say yes, or I'll continue. So stay in the room, don't leave the session. Stay in the room. We'll take a 5 minutes break. I will resume at 12:36. Do not leave the room. I will not admit you again, so don't leave. Okay, guys, let's resume. Okay, so let's see, what all software development models we had in the past. Of course, I'm not talking in detail about them, but let's just see, do a run through of these models that we had in the past and why, what led to the development of, or what led to the introduction of DevOps model, right? So the very initial models that we saw was waterfall model, right? So as the waterfall model speaks that it needs a detailed planning before you begin the project. So you need to detail plan your project in a detailed manner, and then you start with the different phases of your project. So once you surpass a certain phase of your project, you cannot go back to the previous stage and make changes. You can only do it after you finish the entire project and then come back to the original stage. So that it was basically, the waterfall model was very rigid. That is, you cannot move to a previous stage. You can only move forward to the next stage, right? So for only for those projects where you already know what is to be achieved, and where you cannot incorporate new changes in middle of an ongoing process, there we used to use waterfall model, right? Then came agile. So to overcome the issues of waterfall model, where the customers were not happy because their changes or their feedbacks were not taken into consideration, because waterfall model never allowed that kind of interaction. So we came up with an agile methodology where, firstly, the advantage of agile methodology was that constant feedback loop was available. That is, the end user or the clients were shown what is being prepared, and their feedbacks were taken into consideration in order to rework on the model or the feature that was being produced. Another thing is, it was very fast and it was very flexible, because we were doing constant sprints of smaller iterations. So in small iterations, we were building small prototypes of a ongoing project, and then those small prototypes were merged together. So again, agile helped us with that. So agile helped us connect with the customers, and made sure that the customer feedbacks are taken into consideration, and the product is built according to the customer needs and demands, right? Or the changes, frequent changes that the customer is asking to be brought into the product. So that was with agile. But then both agile and waterfall model, they only focused on the development phase. So how a development should happen for a particular product is was the focus of these two models. Both the waterfall and the agile model, they were totally focused on developing a product. That is, what all phases do we need in development of a product? You need to plan, you need to analyze, you need to design, build, test, and then implement, right? So waterfall model was doing that. Similarly, agile was doing that. Waterfall had its own cons, which were overcome by agile iteration methodology, where we were constantly building product in smaller cycles, and we were making sure that the products were built faster. But then we were still over here, we were just focusing on how to develop faster, but we were all that we were talking about was of development. So we were only talking about development. But then, from the explanation or from the introduction that I gave you, what is also important, can someone tell me that term? It is not just the development that matters, it is also the,
Operations.
yes,
Operations.
yes, but more particular term. Okay, I'll go with operation. But then it is not just the development, it is also the deployment that matters. So what good it is, sorry, excuse me for the bad handwriting, but then development is no good if you don't deploy it on time, right? So we develop it in our systems, in our dev machines, or in our testing machines. We test it or we bring it to the staging area. But then what good it is if you cannot deploy it onto the production environment? You have to ensure that the code that was written or tested or staged is later on introduced in the production environment for it to be live. So these considerations were not done in either of these models. So they were totally focused on how to ensure better development, but not how to ensure better deployment. So then we came up with the DevOps culture or DevOps practice or DevOps methodology, where the focus was also on continuous deployment. As you can see over here, these colored boxes. So this one is for design, this one is for code, this one is for test, and this one is for deployment. So waterfall model has a very rigid approach, that is only after you finish designing you can code, after coding you can test, and after testing you can deploy. So the development cycle was very big over here, right? So it all depend upon how long it takes to code, how long it takes to test, and only then you'll be able to release the product onto the market. Agile overcome that issue by breaking this into smaller stages, iterative stages, where you can design at once and then you can code and test in smaller iterations. So you can code one module, another module, third module, fourth module, but then again what you do is you deploy at the end. So development तो fast हो रहा था, but deployment was again not taken into consideration. So DevOps came up with an approach where it says don't just design code and test or and deploy at the end, but do it parallelly. So you design, you code, you test, and you deploy whatever you have done so far, and then you parallelly go on for other changes or other features that you want to incorporate. So a constant deployment was achieved, or constant or continuous deployment was achieved, that made it easier, or that made it, see, the thing that I was talking about in the definition also, that is about the speed, that made it faster for all the teams that used DevOps approach to bring their product faster into the market, to increase the speed of their product releases. So this is what DevOps brings to the table as compared to the other software engineering models that we studied in the past, right? So I hope this gave you a clear idea about what DevOps exactly is. So stakeholder and communication chain is, as you can see over here, we have stakeholders are basically your customers who provides requirements. You have developers and testers, and you have IT operations team, right? The problem with waterfall model was that uh, there was communication gap between the developers and the customers, so that customers were really unhappy with the way the products were being developed, because their feedbacks was not taken into consideration. Agile addresses the gap in customer and developer communication, and it tries to bridge the gap between the customer and the developers. But then there was there was another communication barrier between the operations and the developers team, because that led to longer deployment cycles. Although the development happened quicker, but the deployment was taking time because there were communication barriers between these two, and which led to the slowness of product releases. So then DevOps came into picture, which addresses the gap in developers and IT operations communication. So DevOps bridged this gap between the two teams and made the deployment process even faster. Okay. So these are the DevOps practices that we follow. So as you can see over here, on the left side, we have the things that a dev does. These are the things that dev as in a developer does, and these are the things that an op does, that is operations, right? So what a developer does is he plans, he codes, he builds, and then he tests the code, right? And similarly, what an operations does is he deploys the code, he operates the servers, and he monitors the stability or efficiency of the code that is being deployed. So what is required is, when we say we want to achieve DevOps practice, we have to ensure that there is continuous development that is being taken, that is being done. That is, you don't develop once, you develop continuously in smaller sprints, right? Iteratively, you keep developing new features, you keep innovating, you keep improvising. Next is continuous testing, because as we saw in the previous slides, like I said, you test towards the end of the development cycle. What will happen if you test at the end of the development cycle? The the larger the system that you'll have to test, the larger the time it will take to test the system, plus the more the bugs will be encountered towards the end. So it will affect the overall product release cycle. So continuous testing is also very important. So the moment you have developed a module, you continuously test the same module, right? So continuous testing is one of the practice that DevOps follows. Next is on the ops side, we see that there is continuous deployment. So the code that is continuously developed needs to be continuously deployed onto the production environment. Okay, so that is managed by whom the operations. And similarly, you need continuous monitoring. That is, you need to have tools or facilities that will help you monitor the ongoing uh, process or running of the process to check its efficiency, its stability, its resource utilization, etc. So there has to be a mechanism, there has to be tools that helps operations team to continuously monitor the way the code is performing on their systems and make changes, appropriate changes if required, to stabilize the code. So continuous monitoring is also required at the operation end. But the heart of the entire DevOps practice is the integration part. That is, you need the dev and the ops to integrate. You need them. You don't want this to be a hurdle, because see, if devs says I will follow DevOps practice and he just focuses on development and testing, and ops says I will follow DevOps practice and I will just focus on deployment and monitoring. But the problem is, again, there will be a wall of confusion in between these two. That is, the dev will not be able to pass on the information or the codes to the operations in a constructive way, right? So there can be a wall of confusions that still exists. So in order to avoid that, there is a practice of DevOps that we follow, which is called as continuous integration. That is, the devs now will continuously integrate with the ops. That is, whatever the devs is doing is always known to the ops. How it is to be done, when it is to be done, and where it is to be done, all of that communication takes place through this integration. So continuous integration provides a communication bridge between the dev and the ops that helps the developer teams to continuously integrate their code changes, their development cycles with that of the operations. तो जो भी continuously develop हो रहा है वो automatically integrate होगा through the tools, and using those tools it will be passed on to the operations team. So there are different tools that we will see. The continuous development के लिए कौन से tools है, what tools are used for testing, what tools are used for deployment, what tools are used for continuous monitoring, and what tools are used for continuous integration. So as part of DevOps labs, we will be touching upon one tool each that will help us with continuous development, testing, integration, deployment, and monitoring. Okay, so let's see in detail and let's see the tools that are available in market for each of those phases. So what is continuous development? So continuous development is, this is the phase that involves planning and coding, versioning and managing builds of the software applications functionality. So in continuous development, see, like I said in the previous slides as well, you don't have one person who does all the coding, right? There is not one person as a team. You have multiple teams separated at multiple location who are doing all the work, and these people are doing all the work, and then later on these work are merged onto the main code. So there are branches that come out, and then later on these branches are merged to the main code, right? So merging and branching, this all takes place. So continuous development is a process where teams are allocated separate modules and they're continuously working on parallel growth of a particular product. But then we need tools that helps us manage this parallel development of the product, because if we don't have any tool that will help us manage this, it will be a very chaotic situation. That is, every team is doing its own work, and then later on when we try to merge the different work done by the teams, uh, it the integration will not be successful, the results will be very unpredictable. So we need tools that helps us achieve this seamlessness of development and integration. So there are tools like Git, the GitHub, you have Mercurial, you have Maven, you have Apache, and you have Subversion. So a few of these are version control tools, few of these are build tools that helps you do automated build on the code that is developed, and that helps you manage versions of the code that you are developing. Right. So we have also seen that how different versions of products they come out. So for example, just a Firefox. So there is a certain version of Firefox that keeps rolling out every week or every month. That is because they keep on upgrading the new features into those browsers. So, but what if a certain user wants an older version of that browser? So he still have access to it. He still can, download and install and use it, right? So there are repositories that are available that helps to you to manage those versions of different products, so that if in case you encounter a certain issue with a new version, you can always roll back to the previous version. And that rolling back or making or reverting to an older version is only possible if you have those tools available with you. Otherwise, it will be very chaotic for you to realize ki what was the original code, what was the change made to the original that led to the led to the new version of that code. So, in order to manage different versions of product in during its life cycle, you need such tools that helps you manage it. So Git is one of it, Subversion is one of it, and then similarly you have Maven and Ant that helps you build your code. So what do you mean by building a code? Building is basically compiling your code, packaging your code, doing some sort of unit testing on your code. So all of this, imagine if it has to be done manually, it will take a lot of time. But if you have built tools that helps you build packages out of your code, that makes your task even easier, right? So continuous development, these are the tools that the IT people makes use of, right? So one of our experiments will be on version controls. I know that most of you are good with Git, but some of you who are not, they will have to learn how to use Git and different Git commands. Next is continuous testing. So one of the phases of DevOps practice is continuous testing, where you continuously, repeatedly test the code base for the changes that were made. And testing of course helps improve the quality of your product, right? So if you don't test your product and you just simply send it out to the market, or you bring it onto the production environment, what will happen, if there are issues or there are bugs in your code, hackers or attackers might take advantage of those bugs and issues, and they might steal information, sensitive information. So continuous testing is very much important, and there are tools like Selenium, Jira, Bamboo, Appium. These are Appium is for mobile applications. So these are testing tools that are available in the market that one can use to test the code that is continuously being developed. So these are the testing tools. We will not be covering testing because testing is already done in your software engineering syllabus. Continuous integration, like I said, at the heart of your DevOps practice is continuous integration that helps uh, develop a pipeline between the developer and the operations team, so that developer can just pass on whatever they have created, and that information is received as a pipeline to the operations team, and the operations team can then simply, based on the integration tool that they have introduced, they can simply deploy it in an easier fashion. So continuous integration tools like Jenkins, Circle CI, and Travis CI, these are used by IT industries in order to have a smooth pipeline of work. Like, for example, a pipeline where a code will be pushed to the GitHub. That pushed code will be automatically fetched by the Selenium driver, and it will test the code. Later on, if the test passes, it will be sent on to the build environment to build and package the code. Later on it will be sent on to the testing environment, or sorry, the testing is already done. So after it has been packaged and tested, it will be sent to the deployment environment, where an environment will be created by Docker or probably Ansible or Puppet, and the code will be loaded onto the production environment, and it will be available for the users to use. So all of this is happening in an automated fashion, in a pipeline approach. So Jenkins is one of the major tools that are used in the market or by the IT industry today in order to achieve continuous integration. So we'll be studying Jenkins very well. We'll be installing Jenkins. We'll be seeing how to create a pipeline using Jenkins. All that will be done in the practicals. Next is continuous delivery versus continuous deployment. So continuous deployment, like I said, in the DevOps practice, is one of the DevOps practices that is followed, continuous deployment. But there is another term that is also called as continuous delivery. So usually people tend to get confused between continuous delivery and continuous deployment. So there is a subtle difference between them. That is, in continuous delivery, what happens is the code that we receive from the continuous integration phase is sent for acceptance testing, and it is deployed to the staging area. Where deploying a code to the staging area, whether it is ready to go onto the production, right? But then the only difference between continuous delivery and continuous deployment is delivery will only deliver it till the staging area. From here it has to be a manual process of deploying the accepted code that is in the staging area to the production environment. So this deploying to the production is done in a manual approach. So that is called continuous delivery, where the continuous development testing integration was done later on. After the continuous integration, when the product reaches the staging area, from here it has to be a manual process of picking up the code and deploying it onto the production environment. Whereas in continuous deployment, they have zero manual intervention. All everything is basically automated. There's an automated pipeline approach that is used, where build, test, acceptance test, deploying to staging, simulating it on the staging area. Later on, once it passes the simulation, pushing it onto the the production area, and doing the smoke test on it. So this entire process is automated, no manual intervention, and this is called continuous deployment. So there is a small difference between delivery and deployment, usually Viva question. So you should know that in delivery, the automation is only up till deployment stage in the staging area, whereas where on the operations team has to manually deploy to the production environment. Whereas in continuous deployment, the entire pipeline is automated. So even after the product passes simulation test in the staging area, it will automatically push to the production environment, right? Next DevOps practice is called infrastructure management. So the later part of our DevOps lab will totally focus on infrastructure management. So when I was addressing the elephant in the room, and when I was discussing the problems with traditional ID approach, one of the problems that we touched upon was the time it takes to configure an infrastructure in order to host your applications, right? So in what do you mean by infrastructure services? Infrastructure services is basically, for example, for an application to run on a production environment, there are so many things that we have to configure. You have to configure the front end, you have to configure the back end, you have to configure a middleware, you have to configure storage services, any APIs if you are using. So there are so many things that one has to keep into account when it is when there is an infrastructure services involved in order to host your application. It can be a lot of things like storage, database, network, your servers that where you're hosting those applications, provisioning the server. Basically, provisioning means to scale up your server or scale down your server based on the necessity or based on the capacity required. Security management is another important consideration. Application management, then monitoring and alert notification. These are all modules that are plays an important part in your infrastructure services. So usual traditional IT approach or operations team, if they don't have any automation tools, if they do it all manually, it will take a lot of time to configure an infrastructure to suit the application demands. So usually what happens is, even though the application was developed fast, the time to develop the application was fast, but the deployment time is very huge. The time to develop the application was T1, and as you can see, T2 to deploy the code took a lot of time, because the time it took to set up the infrastructure service was very huge, right? So we need to reduce this time. We need to reduce this time T2, so that the time to the market or the product release becomes faster, right? So DevOps practices helps you reduce the setup time of an IT infrastructure, and we will see how that is done. So that can be done using infrastructure as a code concept, also called as configuration management. So DevOps brings you this special automation tool called Chef, SaltStack, Terraform, Puppet, Ansible, Kubernetes, Docker. Docker is not a configuration management; it's a microservice tool. But then these are the tools that are used widely in industry in order to achieve configuration management or to set up infrastructure in no time. So we will be having labs on this, how to set up infrastructure in no time with the help of code. So imagine setting up a server through lines of codes. So if you have a code which you just deploy
or and then your server is ready. Imagine that. Because what happens usually is, for you, if you visualize configuring a server, basically what you will see is, what you will imagine is, you have a Linux terminal where you are writing in codes, lines of code. You're typing in different commands to configure LAMP stack, installing MySQL, installing Apache, installing Tomcat, etc., and then configuring their files and copying files for respective libraries, etc. So a lot of things you comes into your mind, right? But when we say infrastructure as a code, you don't have to do anything. You just have to write a piece of code and then just deploy the piece of code using these tools, which will help. Once you deploy this piece of code using any of these tools, it will set up the IT infrastructure for you with the required software stack and dependencies or libraries, whatever you have written inside this particular file. So infrastructure can be set up using code, which is why we say it as infrastructure as a code, right? Coming to another DevOps approach is that is called microservice architecture. Now, this is very important. In today's application, they are all microservice based because they don't follow monolithic approach, right? Because monolithic code base में क्या होता है? Everything is coded together in one layer. And problem with such approach is what? If one of the modules fail, it will bring down the entire application. So a better approach is to go for microservices architecture where you can use different APIs. You can construct modular. You can have modular functionalities where you can attach more modular functionalities to your ongoing product, or you can bring down one of the services, and in case there is a maintenance required in account service, you can bring it down but still leave the product operational. Or probably you can bring in more APIs. You can connect your application to other third party services to bring in more features to your existing application. So all of that is possible if you go for a microservice architecture approach, and this approach can be achieved using one of the tools called Docker. So Docker is another tool that helps you create, deploy, and run applications by using containers. I will not discuss it in detail here because itself is a big topic. So we'll discuss it during our lab. So Docker is one of the tools that DevOps has you know, uh, in its umbrella, that is used to create applications in a containerized fashion. So I'll just give an example of what Docker helps you with. So just imagine, usually the scenario that we see as teachers are, students, they do their coding, they develop their project on their laptops. Now, once they develop their project on the laptop, they carry it in their laptop only. They cannot. I mean, they are afraid to install it on college machines and show it to us on the college machine because they are afraid that their code might not run on college machine, or probably they will have to redo the entire setup on the college machine and then launch their code there. So they are afraid of doing so, right? So they or and in some times also what happens is, these students, if they even try to do it on the college machine, the code might fail and they will say ki, it was working fine on our personal laptop, but we don't know why it's not working in the college environment. So there is some issue and we are not able to. We are just coders, so we are not bothered about the environmental issues. So I don't know, it worked fine on my laptop, it's not working in the college environment. So for such issues we have Docker that comes to rescue, where Docker helps you bundle the entire OS stack, the code, as well as the application and the dependencies that are required. So here it does not helps you with the application that you have written, but also the environment, your application, the environment on which it was running, and the dependencies, libraries and etc. that it required. ये पूरा stack को वो एक container में डाल देगा, and then you can use this container and you can ship this container from one machine to another. So irrespective of the underlying OS of the other machine, जैसे for example मैंने ये application उसका environment इस machine में बनाया था, I dockerized it, I containerized it. Now I am passing on this container to this machine. So अगर let's say this was Windows, it was Windows on which I created this application. This machine has Linux. Will it work on it if I don't use Docker? No, it will not, because then I'll have to have a respective stack requirement on this machine, right? But with the help of Docker, what happens is if I containerize my application, I can simply take this container and I can load it on this machine. Only thing required is a Docker engine. So I need a Docker engine on this machine which will load the container, and it will give it an environment just like it had in the original machine. So not just the app, but the entire environment I am shipping along with using that container. So this is called containerization, and Docker usually goes for a microservice approach, right? So this is what it brings to the table, which is why it is classified as one of the DevOps tools. Next is continuous monitoring. So like I said, you just not need not see during a development life cycle, our work doesn't get over when it is deployed to the production. The work of a team does not get over there. Once it has been deployed, they have to check whether how the performance of the deployed code is, whether it is working fine, whether what is the stability of that particular code, or how much resources it is consuming, what are the level of requests it is receiving. If there are more requests, then you need to scale up the hardware resources, etc. So you need tools that helps you monitor the performance of your application that you have deployed. And for such monitoring, there are tools like Nagi OS, you have Splunk, you have Elastic, Kibana, Logstash. So these are the tools that are available in the market that helps you do achieve continuous monitoring of your application, maybe the health of your application, maybe the performance, or maybe the reliability of your application, right? So all of these factors are monitored and measured and given to you in terms of a dashboard environment. So all these applications, they provide dashboards where you can check the health of your application, running application. And then lately we also have cloud-based DevOps, because we have seen businesses moving towards cloud infrastructures, where more than having a traditional IT server environment, businesses are hosting their applications on these well-known cloud platforms like Microsoft Azure, AWS, or Google Cloud. Right. So the DevOps practice needs also to be brought into these cloud environments. We cannot say that the DevOps will only work if you have a traditional IT setup where you have your own servers and your own physical infrastructure. No, it should not be the case. DevOps methodology or practices can also be followed if your infrastructure is hosted on a cloud environment. So every cloud service provider has their own set of services that helps you achieve this DevOps based practice, and either they provide you those DevOps tools on as a service in their you know in the services that they provide, or you can use the tools explicitly. So just say for example, Amazon, you have Amazon Lambda, GCP, maybe you have some tools that helps you achieve DevOps practices or create pipelines. Even in Microsoft Azure, you have tools or services that helps you create DevOps pipeline. So all that is possible. So for example, Kubernetes is one of the services provided by Google in order to form cluster of microservices architecture of the applications that you're hosting on the Google Cloud platform. So all that can be done using Kubernetes in Google, right? So there are provisions available for DevOps to work under different cloud platforms as well. Okay. So now that we have understood what DevOps is, we see the same scenario again that we saw in the previous slides, where non-DevOps environment mein, what were the issues. So now we'll try to see how DevOps has overcome that issue. So with DevOps, now what happens is those teams that we saw, they are not segregated, their roles and responsibilities are not separated. Instead, constant communication between the teams engaged in the software development takes place. So since there is a constant development and communication that is happening between the team, the prolongation of the project is reduced and the project will be delivered on time. Next is fewer software failures caused by the differences in infrastructure configuration. So we saw there that the test, development, and production environment were set up differently by different people and with different versions of software stack. But since we are using infrastructure as a code, we have one file which has the infrastructure requirements written in terms of code, and we are running that same file on all the machines. So now there is no chance that the infrastructure setup on different machines will be different, since the infrastructure was written in a file and we applied that file on these three machines. All the three machines will be identical, so the chances that the code will fail in one of the machines will is reduced, or is is zero because all of them are having identical environments. So next is fast provision of new infrastructure. So again, with the help of IAC, that is infrastructure as a code approach, the engineers can immediately deploy new infrastructure setup for a new project. So where in the previous it used to take time, it was a very time consuming process manually to set up all the machines and IT infrastructure. Now with the help of IAC, that is infrastructure as a code, you have the file ready with you. You just have to deploy it onto the machine and it will set up the entire infrastructure for you, right? The increased amount of test automation. So again, continuous testing as a DevOps practice has helped increase the testing of your product and also has helped you identify bugs at the initial stage even before you put it onto the production environment. So continuous testing से क्या हो रहा है? The bugs are identified at the initial stage, which is helping you reduce the cost drastically, right? Because we saw in the consequences of inefficiencies where if the bug is identified post release, here it will be 100 times more costly for you if the bug is encountered post release. But if you encounter a bug before release, it will be cheaper and cost effective for you in order to overcome that bug, right? Next is quick and reliable delivery of application updates. So again, the advantage with DevOps approach is if you want to update your application, if you want to pull out a new feature or a change in your application, that is becoming quicker because of the pipeline approach or because of the automation tools that we are using under DevOps umbrella. So that is also has made it quicker. Next is fewer post-release errors. So once with the DevOps approach, what's happening is once you pass the test environment, the production environment will run very smooth because there's a continuous testing that is happening. The environments are stable, and the errors later on that will come out will be very fewer. It will only be coding errors, nothing like environment setup error or testing errors, right? So fewer errors post the release is one of the advantage of DevOps, and ultimately it will improve the user trust because where we saw due to the non-DevOps approach, the quality of the software was degraded, where the business users lost the trust in you. Here, since you are using DevOps approach, the quality of the software that you are releasing is very high, and which ultimately, makes your customers happy and improves the trust on your product, right? So this is what DevOps brings to the table. So the CALMS framework for DevOps, when we talk about the framework that DevOps usually uses. It is the CALMS framework that is called culture, automation, lean, measurement, and sharing. Let's understand quickly. So when we talk about culture, DevOps is basically it's not a tool. Huh? DevOps is a frame. DevOps is a collaboration. DevOps is a methodology. It's a philosophy, and we say it's an idea that everyone should come together and they should work in unanimity. They should work as one team and the communication channel should always be open. So there should not be any cultural differences or any communication gap between the teams when they work on a business, when they work towards achieving a common business goal. So DevOps isn't one team's job, it's everyone's job, is what DevOps as a culture has to say, right? Next is automation. So what DevOps brings to the table is automation. That is, it eliminates repetitive manual work and makes sure that the systems are reliable. It helps you catch bugs and security flaws sooner, allowing developers to fix them more easily. Teams new to automation usually start with continuous delivery. Later on, they move to continuous deployment. And then DevOps major contribution is the idea of configuration as a code. So the major innovation that DevOps brought was IAC, infrastructure as a code, or you can say configuration as a code, because it was very important that the deployment to be fastened. Because development पे तो we were focusing using waterfall and agile methodology, but the deployment was not taken into consideration. So ये deployment जो था, this needed to be fastened. So this was able to be fastened because of the IAC approach, that is infrastructure as a code approach. Okay, so what the lean management approach says is, one second. I think the boxes are going wrong. So lean management is basically reduce or eliminate wastage of resources. So DevOps makes sure that you don't waste any resource. All the resources are used optimally used. So that is what lean management or the framework says, that everything needs to be accounted for and no wastage should be done. That is what lean management says, right? So next is measurement. This is talking about measurement. So DevOps also says that you don't just work, make sure that the work is smoothened or the work is done faster, or the deployment or the development is done in a faster fashion. It also asks you to measure that what you have achieved. Basically, how long did it take to go from development to deployment? How often do recurring bugs or failures happen? How long did it take to recover after a system failure? How many people are using your product right now? How many users did you gain or lose this week? And all this data will help your team make decisions, but it's even more powerful when shared with other teams, right? So this is what DevOps says. Under measurement framework, it says that you have to measure your outcome of the work done. Basically, if you say that you have used DevOps approach, you have to figure out how much time did it took from development to deployment, how many errors were encountered, or how easily errors were encountered, how fast errors were encountered, how fast it took for you to recover those system failure, how many users did you lose or gain this week, how many people are using your product at any point in time. So all this information, if you gather as statistics and if you pass it on to other teams, they will be able to relate, and they will be able to then later on do modifications in order to better the statistics. So measurement is also required when it comes to DevOps. And finally, it's about sharing. That is, the teams need to collaborate. The teams need to give positive feedbacks to each other. They need to in times of issues or bugs, in times of failures, they need to come together and they need to take responsibilities of the failures, and they need to work together. So if they celebrate success together, they need to celebrate, at the times of failure, they need to come together and discuss what led to the failure. So this is what sharing as framework of DevOps says, right? So culture, automation, lean, and measurement and sharing are the framework for DevOps. So which is why we call it as CALMS framework. So benefits of adapting to DevOps are what? Faster time to market and increase productivity. So if you use DevOps approach, you will be faster to the market. You will increase your productivity. Reduced development failures and rollback. Of course, since you're continuously developing, testing, integrating, the development failures will of course reduce, right? And the rollbacks that you make in case of failures, they will also be lesser. Faster recovery time if there is any failure. So even if there are failures, with the help of DevOps approach, you will be able to recover much quicker as compared to a traditional IT approach. And reduce development time and less management complexity. Since you are making use of all those automation tools will make it very easier for you to operate or manage the complexity of your existing IT infrastructure. So these are the benefits that DevOps bring. So this is the symbol of DevOps. Infinity is a symbol of DevOps, where this is broken into multiple phases. That is plan, build, continuous integration, deploy, operate, and continuous feedback. So this is the symbol of DevOps, which is infinite. That is, it's a continuous process. It's real time communication and it is continuous. You plan, build, you integrate, you deploy, you operate, and then you pass on the feedback again in order to make changes in your plan, rebuild, reintegrate, and this is a never ending process. So now, as you can see, for every phase of your DevOps cycle, there are tools that are available, and there are plethora of tools available. So for planning, you have all these tools that are available to plan a project. To build, you have all these tools. Major of them are Git, you have Docker, you have Kubernetes, then you have Ant, you have Maven. For continuous, again during build and testing, you have Selenium, JUnit, Finesse. There's so many tools available, and some of them are freeware, some of them are open source, some of them are paid. So it depends which one do you use. Of course, most of the IT today they are using, either they have their own proprietary DevOps tool or they use an open source DevOps tool. So Jenkins is one of the open source DevOps tools which is very famous. Git is one of the very famous DevOps tool. When it comes to containerization, Docker, Kubernetes is one of the famous. Then when it comes to deployment or infrastructure as a code, then you have Puppet, you have Chef, you have SaltStack. And when it comes to cloud related services, we are familiar about GCP, Microsoft Azure, AWS, right? And when it comes to feedback or monitoring, there are tools like Splunk, which is very famous, Nagios, that is very famous. So there are different tools that have their own feature set that one can use, right? So it is not that you have to master all these tools. It is about mastering or understanding the DevOps practice. Because see, when you go for placements also, or when you go for any interview, if you use this term more often in your interview or while you speak to the interviewer, it will give him an idea that you are familiar with what is there in the industry, how industry is adapting to DevOps practices, and he might be more interested in talking to you about what do you know of DevOps, and then from there on you can take the conversation, right? So if you can master one of these tools or a few of these tools, it will give you an edge over the other your peers while you go for interview. Because if you say that I know how to use Jenkins, if you say I know how to use Docker, or if you say I know how to use Selenium, or any of these tools, so you have to do a good research about the company. You see which tools the company is using, and if you can quickly learn about that tool, even an introduction to that tool, it will give you an advantage over your peers, right? So DevOps is very important from placement point of view as well, because nowadays there are so many job roles that come up. You will see that it asks for DevOps related profiles, where you cannot say that I'm just good with Python, or I'm just good with machine learning. I but and I'm good with Java. You cannot say that I don't know how to handle servers. I don't know how to handle middle layer or middleware. You cannot say that, because nowadays companies are hiring people who can operate in a diversified portfolio. They want people with good mix of both operations as well as DevOps. So which is why this topic was introduced to you in the revised syllabus, where in case you go for placements, you have a better idea about what is happening in the industry, and you be abreast with the latest trends in the industry. Career opportunities are very good in DevOps. So, but then to be a DevOps engineer, the basic you have to start with Linux. Unless you know Linux, it will be very difficult roadmap for you to reach to the top. So, understanding Linux and scripting is very important when it comes to DevOps. Later on, you can start with the first thing that you can do is version control. This is the roadmap that we will be following in our DevOps experiments. So we will starting with version control, then we will be starting with Jenkins, that is continuous integration tools. Then we'll be starting with Docker, that is microservices architecture. Then we'll be moving on to tools like Ansible and Puppet for configuration management. We Nagios and Splunk is something that you can learn on your own, which we don't have in our practicals. But these are continuous monitoring tools. These are tools that helps you monitor your applications, their performance, etc. And then some of the companies, they also, most of the companies today, they want you to also have knowledge of Amazon Web Services, or any of the Google, or any of the cloud platforms. So if you are good with any of these, either Amazon or GCP or Oracle or Azure, any one of the cloud platforms, if you are well versed with, so again that will add to the knowledge and will give you good edge over others during the interview process. So this is the roadmap. If you want to become a DevOps engineer, and of course DevOps engineers are paid very heavily in the market. So if you go on to Glassdoor, if you go on to any other job portals, you will find that major job requirements have DevOps specification in the job roles or roles and responsibilities, and they are paid very handsomely. So if you're wanting to be into IT industry, you can choose this as your career path. This is one of the career path that you can choose. So if you're not too much into coding, and you want to handle systems, or you are more of a technology person, then you can go for DevOps role. And if you are more of a coding person, you want to code applications, then you can choose for a developer's role. But today, the job profiles are such that they demand not just developers, they demand DevOps engineer. That is, you being a developer, you should also know how to use Jenkins, how to use Selenium, how to use XYZ tools that will aid your development process. So it is very important that you have knowledge of these tools at least, right? So that you can answer in the interview. So with this, I've come to the end of the introduction to DevOps. From the next practical onwards, I will start with demonstrating all these tools to you. Okay. So in the next lecture, we'll be doing Git and Jenkins. So I hope things are clear to you what DevOps is. The picture is clear. Just give me a yes. Okay, you can write your roll numbers and present in the chat box. Don't leave the session. Okay, your attendance link is here. You have to fill this form. It has a few MCQs in it. You have to answer them. It's based on the introduction that I gave you. So you have to fill this as well. Also, before you fill this, I have shared with you the post labs. So if you can see over here, I think the post lab is live now. You can check it. So the instructions are very clear. Batch currently I'm dealing with batch B and D. So B and D has to handwrite the experiments. Post lab for experiments 3 and 4. B has to handwrite 3 and 4, and D has to handwrite 7 and 8. Rest other post labs you can it can be printed. It can be a soft copy. But then you have to arrange all the post labs together. Huh? I'm not asking it for now, but as in when I finish one of the experiments, you have to start with the process. Let's say, for example, today I finished with DevOps. The first experiment is the post lab is what is DevOps, how is DevOps different from traditional IT, how is DevOps different from Agile. So these questions you have to answer, right? And since batch B and D have to do, I think, other experiments, so you can type or you can get the resources from the internet, but you have to summarize in your own word. You don't have to just copy paste from the internet. The references are available. I've given the references link as well, but you have to refer and rewrite in your own words. You don't have to just copy paste. If you copy paste, you will lose marks. If you rewrite, you will get better marks. Okay. So at the end, I will ask you for a common PDF, one single PDF file, which will have post labs of all the experiments, which I will grade at the end. Okay, I will tell you the date when will that happen. But as in when I finish one experiment, you start with your post labs. You keep it handy. Okay. So I hope this is clear. B and D. B has to handwrite experiment number 3 and 4. D has to handwrite 7 and 8. Rest others they can use internet and use soft copy to create their post labs, but in their own words. So don't have to upload the post lab now. Huh? You have to do it in your machines. And when I ask you for submission, then you have to upload it. Okay, guys. So we will end it today and meet other day in the next week. And again, B and D will be together only. So I'll be taking the two batches together itself. Okay. Yes, you all can leave.